So the recording of this session will be made available after this session. As you have registered for the session, I will email the link direct to you, but it will also be uploaded to our engagement portal at engage.kalamunda.wa.gov.au/public art. I'll hand over to Nicole to do the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you very much, Kat. The City of Kalamunda would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk Noongar people whose lands we meet on. We acknowledge their elders past, present and future, and also their ongoing contribution to our community.
Thank you very much, Nicole. So just to give a quick overview for today, I'll start off with a quick icebreaker activity. I'll go over very briefly the house rules. There'll be a very quick presentation on the Public Art Master Plan and the city's journey to how we got to where we are today. Then there'll be an introduction / handover from the city staff to Maggie Baxter, who will be facilitating the workshop portion of this session. And then obviously at the end, we would like to get your feedback, as this is one of our first few online sessions that the city is conducting. So it would be really good to get your feedback on how you felt you went with this workshop and your experience overall. And then Brittany will go through the next steps as to how the Public Art Master Plan will come to be developed. So if I could get everyone's, if you have it handy, if you have your smartphone, if you could get that out, please. I'll give you a few minutes to get that. And once you've got your smartphone, if you could just enter in your smartphone's browser, menti.com. And then once you load that up, it will actually ask you for a code, and that code is 227595.
Should we do that too?
Now, guys, if anybody doesn't have access to a smartphone today, you can leave comments for us in the chat, or you can also just, of course, have a chat as well. So you can just use your speaker. So it's just one of the additional ways. But if you've got your smartphone around, it is fantastic, because in a couple of sessions, we're actually going to ask you to rate some of your preferred options. And the joy of this particular tool is that everyone's feedback who's on the call comes up on the screen at the same time. But as I said, we have had some workshops where people didn't have access to an iPad or to a mobile device of some sort. And you can just leave us those comments in the chat or have a chat to us at the end. So you can see we've had some feedback from our attendees that they're busy, they're interested and they're engaged. So thank you guys so much. And it's great to see that you've got Menti working nice and easily as well. We find it to be a great tool to get really good feedback.
So what does one have to do? I've got my iPad here, but I haven't got my phone.
Yeah, no, that will do. Yeah, so if you just open up the browser on your iPad, should be Safari, I think, from memory. And then in that, in Safari, if you go to Menti, menti.com, and then it will ask you for a 6-digit code, which is 227595.
Thoughtful and excited. I mean, people are feeling pretty positive. I'm loving the look of that board.
Engaged, I like it.
Me too. How did you go, Jen? Did you manage to see Menti in your browser?
I can, but it's asking me questions about it. What is menti.com? How do I make a Menti survey? So sorry, let's not hold things up.
That's okay. I would just put the www at the top, and then there's often a spot on the screen that says pop your access code in, and if you find that box, it's just the 227595. But also feel free as we're going through to leave a comment in the chat or just let us know what you're thinking on any of the questions.
Okay.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to see you've got one in there too. No, thanks for that. That's just a little icebreaker just to get everyone familiar with the tool, as we will be using Mentimeter throughout this presentation. But like Nicole said, you're also welcome to pop any comments in the chat, and we'll be moderating that chat throughout the session. So I'll move on to the next slide. So just the house rules. As you know, it is a challenging environment. We are starting to do a lot more of these workshops online. However, one pitfall, I guess, of doing online workshops is that if you tend to have multiple people speaking, it can distort and cut out the other person's feed. So we do ask that during the presentation portion, of which Nick will be presenting, if you could please just mute your mics during that presentation, just so that we don't hear any background noise or anything like that. And then while we're doing the workshop presentation, obviously we want to encourage and facilitate discussion, but we would prefer if people speak one at a time if possible. You might see that on your team screen, there is an option to raise your hand. So I think in the middle of the screen, there is a little bar and there's 3 little dots. And I think if you hover over that, or in that bar, there should be an option for you to raise your hand. So that will put up an icon next to your screen, and then we will be able to allocate you a turn as such, so that we can facilitate that discussion smoothly. And like I mentioned, one person speak at a time, and of course the chat function is always there. And now I'll just hand over to Nicole O'Neill. She's the Manager of Customer and Public Relations. She'll give an overview of the Public Art Master Plan and the city's journey to date.
Thank you so very much, Kat. So in actual fact, I'm going to start the presentation and then I'm going to hand over to Brittany Cover, who is our new Arts and Culture Coordinator, and she'll talk a little bit more specifically about the master plan itself. But from the City of Kalamunda's point of view, we are extremely excited in relation to the development of the master plan. And if we can flick to the next slide, please. So in terms of what the public master plan actually is, it's this most amazing opportunity for us to ensure that public art becomes a larger part of life in the City of Kalamunda. The master plan will identify opportunities and it will also prioritise sites and projects for public art, so that we can create great places that reflect our natural assets and also the many significant Aboriginal sites within the City of Kalamunda. And the city has already done a lot of work in that space, in fact, working with the South West Land and Sea Council and also the Wodjuk Working Party in relation to a number of our sites with both artworks and interpretive signage and the like installed. So I don't think I need to talk to you guys about why public art is important, because I know that you're all very, very interested in the further progression of public art and understand its importance. But I think it's something for us to all keep in mind for when we're talking to all members of the community. So for us, the city believes that public art can strengthen our sense of place. It enhances the city's visual appeal, and it also connects our past with our present and future visions. Just in terms of the city's art journey, I thought that it was a nice opportunity to share some of our history, because actually the City of Kalamunda has a strong arts history. We were, as I understand it, we're just flicking forward a little bit farther. Thanks for that, Kat. We were one of the first councils to ever employ an arts officer, and as I understand it, that arts officer was actually Mrs. Iris Jones, who is still a resident of the City of Kalamunda and worked for a couple of decades on a number of projects. And at the back of the screen, you'll notice that we've put a little inset of part of the stained glass window, which of course is at the Kalamunda Library, and was a collaborative project with a number of community artists back at that particular time. The city has a number of pieces of public art which are very iconic, and I think it's important to remember that, because a lot of those works have came about not because the city had a public art master plan, and that's really why we are here where we are today. It was actually a real push from individual community members, from artists, and also from officers within the city to ensure that as much as possible, public art was incorporated in any new developments that were taking place across the city. But also wherever there was budget available, there was always officers really looking for public art opportunities. And I must reference the work of Marilyn Keys at this point, who is our current gallery and events coordinator, but has also been with the city for many years and really has led the charge on a number of those particular projects. Of course, though, we don't have a current master plan, which I think is extremely important when it comes to public art. We do operate a number of cultural facilities or facilities that allow us to enjoy art per se, and opened the Zigzag Gallery back in 2011. And of course, the Kalamunda Performing Arts Centre back in 1996, which we actually also share with the Kalamunda Senior High School in terms of the theatre component. In more recent times, and I won't run through the entire history because I think that could be a whole session on its own, but in more recent times, the city worked to form the Kalamunda Arts Advisory Committee, and I did introduce Mrs. Claire Eden earlier, who is part of that committee. It's been chaired since its formation by Mr. Andy Farrant, who also has a strong history in the arts and was CEO of Country Arts Western Australia. And the committee have been integral in terms of really bringing art to the agenda and of council and ensuring that the arts as a creative sector were continually prioritised, and I suppose that opportunities were enhanced or increased wherever possible. And one of the first big things that the committee did in collaboration with the city was they created the Creative Communities Art Strategy, which was adopted by council in June 2019. And if you haven't seen a copy of that, it's also available on our engagement portal where you can comment for the master plan itself. Importantly, last year, council also adopted the local planning policy for public art contributions, and that's called LPP 26. And that was adopted in November 2019. And I know there might be some people going, well, what does a local planning policy have to do with art? Sometimes planning and the arts seem to be quite separate things, but it's really, really quite significant. And again, I must thank both the Arts Advisory Committee, who advocated really heavily in relation to the development of this planning policy, but also the city's planning teams, our arts team, and the various business units who got involved. If we can flick forward, Kat. The reason that this particular planning policy is so important is because in the same way that the city might have something called a developer contribution, if land is being developed or work is happening at a certain site, say to allow public open space to be created. You know, many of us will be aware that when there's land planning, that's often how new parks and things are actually formed. That's because there's an allocation of those development costs that is actually put to those particular public open spaces. And it's been like that since, golly, at least the 1980s. So you'll see a lot of infrastructure that was created as land was developed. But what the city hasn't had before, which a number of local governments have actually introduced over the last few years, is a percentage for public art. And last year in November, council actually signed off on that percentage being 1% of the project's cost for all new developments over $500,000 up to a max of $250 will be contributed to public art. Now, why is this important? The real reason that this is so important is because it will ensure that funding is available for public art, so that public art is becoming more self-funded and isn't requiring, say, rates funding or, for example, advocacy or grants funding. Just as development naturally takes place, this money will be placed into a reserve and will actually allow the city to undertake public art projects. And it's inherently linked with the reason why we need a public art master plan and why we're going to ask you guys for a lot of feedback today, because it will form the monetary contribution of what has been called the City of Kalamunda's Public Art Fund. And we're now in that point where we need to create the master plan. And so there is no draft master plan as yet per se. We wanted to start right back at the beginning with the community. And I know that a number of the advisory committees and things also have some views on this. But the idea of the current consultation is to actually seek feedback from the community in relation to what's important to go into the development of that public art master plan. And once developed, it would then be further advertised back to all of the artists and community members that had their say to make sure that the team have got the draft right. So it's possibly one of the most exciting times in the history of the City of Kalamunda in terms of a true recognition of the importance of public art, but also a measure to actually ensure that public art occurs, that we see an increase in public art via the master plan. So if we can kick on, please, Kat. I also just wanted to reference, we are focused on public art today, but just up on the screen, I wanted to showcase the very large annual City of Kalamunda events calendar that does also have a strong connection to the arts. So a lot of work goes in. There's many installations that are a part of events. You know, recently at the City of Kalamunda's wrap launch, there was a sand art installation that actually occurred while the launch was taking place. There's many cultural performances, shows at KPAC, gallery openings at the Zigzag Gallery. You know, the arts is very prolific, and I think we have a community that are very passionate and very supportive of the arts. And I think the work that we're doing with the Public Art Master Plan will really take this to the next level in terms of public art itself. So at this point, I'm actually now going to hand over to Brittany, who's going to just give a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll get to hear from the lady of the hour, the very talented Maggie Baxter.
How do I flip the slides on with that?
I think you just ask Katrina. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you, Nicole, for that introduction and overview of the city's journey to date. Certainly agree with the commentary around this is a really exciting time for the City of Kalamunda, and certainly for me a great opportunity to come on board and help continue to lead the city's journey through this process. I won't say too much. I'll hand over to Maggie, who can tell you about what she's been up to. For those of you who don't know Maggie, I reckon most of you probably do. Maggie was appointed by the city to develop the master plan last year.
Right at the beginning of this year.
Oh, right at the beginning of this year. And so we've been discussing ways that we can continue to be leading the public art master plan journey whilst navigating our way through COVID, which is why we are chatting to you all today in this forum. So I will hand over to you, Maggie.
Okay, so just hi everybody, and thank you so much for coming to this forum, which is a new thing for me. This is the first online community session I've done, which is, you know, it's actually a really great new skill to have, I think. Just a little bit of background about myself. As Brittany said, I've been working in public art for a long time, over 25 years, and a lot of the work is with the state government through the Department of Finance, but I also work a lot with other government agencies, private developers, and I've done as well as managing individual art projects, I've done a lot of public art strategies for organisations like the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority and its previous incarnations as the Midland Redevelopment Authority, East Perth Subiaco. Now it's become Development WA. I haven't done any yet for Development WA, but you never know. And also I have done strategies for local government authorities, and I've worked on a lot of the major infrastructure projects around the city, like Elizabeth Quay, a little bit on Yagan Square, the Gateway WA project, which with the road systems in and out of the airport. So, you know, I think I do know a fair bit, I hope, now about public art. Before I was a public art coordinator and consultant, I was the curator of artworks at Curtin University, and also for a very short time as a kind of fill-in at Edith Cowan University. So I've been engaged in the arts one way or another in WA now for about 35 years, and I do also practice as an artist myself. Somehow in between it all, I manage to do some artwork. Mainly I do that by running away to India, which of course at the moment I can't do because of COVID. It's ruined lots of aspects of our lives. So that's a little bit of background about me. I think we need to move on to the next slide. Oh yeah. So what I really want to do from this workshop is find out what it is that makes you all feel, because this strategy is actually about you. It's not about me at all. I'm just pulling together the threads of what it is the community feels passionate about, that we can feed into getting some absolutely fantastic public art projects up and running for you. So in terms of trying to develop a thematic approach, and I notice that I wasn't really aware before I started this, I have to confess, about just how large the City of Kalamunda was geographically, because although I'd worked with the City of Kalamunda when it was the Shire before on a strategy for the town centre, I didn't realise how wide it was, that it kind of went all the way from Gooseberry Hill and probably beyond down to Wattle Grove, and now of course also has industrial areas in it. So it's an extremely diverse city, and as you all know better than I, a lot of it is forest and semi-rural, and then as I said, now you've got industrial. So in trying to get something really kind of cohesive happening that really talks about what the city is within that diversity, what I want to know from you is what it is that you love most about the City of Kalamunda, because I think that it's those things that will feed in, and from that we will develop the themes of the public art projects. So is that, people are doing the Menti thing? Yeah, the Menti's new for me too, actually, as of this morning. So I'm quite excited to see what you all put up. So we'll environment, sense of community. Are other people interacting?
I can see people typing away.
Ah, okay, yeah, great, good. Thanks.
I'm not
natural environment comes up quite a lot.
I'm not sure. I joined a bit late, so I'm yeah.
Hi,
have you got that? Hi. Somebody recognises me.
It's Nick here from the City of Kalamunda. I've just sent you a link in the chat that goes to the Menti site, and it'll just come up with asking you for a code. You just put in those 6 digits, and you'll be able to type in whatever you think to each of the questions. Okay.
Okay. I'll have a look.
So the chat icon looks like a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screen, usually next to the raise your hand option.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so people to speak, that'd be great. And comment.
Can we comment verbally?
Yes, I think so.
Yep.
Well, I agree that it's that the environment is one of the things that draws people together in Kalamunda, the relationship with the bush. And it does have a heightened sense of community, like probably Fremantle is one of the only other shires, I think, or cities that has that huge network of interaction between community groups and communities coming out over strong issues. But I think the other thing is that we need to look at that new community that you're talking about, Maggie, the industrial strip,
Yes.
and how they might
Yes.
interact with us. I think that's a huge untapped potential. And just as a historical thing, the history of community arts or cultural development with the Shire goes back earlier than Iris. So you want to dip into the local studies collection there.
It goes back to you, I think, Jenny, as well.
Yeah, I think it does.
Well, even before me, to a very forward-thinking librarian, actually, Leslie Tannehill, who did a huge amount before anything got formalised. So they're things, I think, to broaden your history with.
Yeah, absolutely. We were looking to give just a little snapshot today, but you're spot on. I think it's worth its own little YouTube video, to be honest. There's such an amazing history there. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny. And actually, you sort of stepped in because I wanted to play a bit as devil's advocate, looking at everyone's come back. Well, most people have come back with saying how important the environment is, which is not surprising. But I did want to step in and be a bit of a devil's advocate because of that new development and around the rail station, which I think is erroneously called Forestville, but it's actually in High Wycombe. You know, and that's all going to be developed. And then there is the Forestfield industrial area next to that. And over again in Wattle Grove, there's that whole area that's, I think, the road highway logistics. Mm-hmm. And I just, you know, be interested to know if you, from people, how you all see that fitting in, or do you see that fitting in with what you've already feel about this strong sense of environment?
Well, I think it's a shattering of the environment, if you must know. And the logistics park, I think, is in the city of Gosnells. Is
it on the Wattle Grove? Is that on the one
Wattle
side of the
Grove.
highway is Gosnells? No, Canning it would be, wouldn't it? I don't know.
I think Logistics Park is in the city of Gosnells, though, isn't it?
So is that being split by road?
I can probably clarify that one for you. So most of it is in the city of Gosnells, but there is a portion that's called the Kalamunda Wedge. So when you get to the corner of Hale Road and Welshpool, that's in Kalamunda, that one. So thank you guys for that. We are going to move on to the next question. I think we've seen some really common themes there in terms of what we love about this place. Yeah.
So excited though we all are about getting some more public up and going in Kalamunda, we probably need to prioritise where we're putting the money, and just really thinking about what it is. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. What it is you think should guide the development of art projects. So it's still a little bit on the themes, but looking at a number of different themes within that I've kind of thought about. Would you like to rank them in what you think is important? And the final one is, well, it's not the final, you might all put it as number one. Art doesn't have to have a theme. It can just be a fabulous piece of art for no other reason than it's a fabulous piece of art.
So as you're rating everyone, you'll see that while you're actually watching the screen, it'll potentially change as each person actually puts their ideas forward. So it'll continue to calculate the overall views of anyone who is on the line at the moment.
And lives here.
Jenny, I might just throw to you if possible, because I don't think you're using the app, are you? Or I think you might be on mute.
No, I'm not.
Well, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on this question, just out of interest more than anything for me, because I know that you have a long history of public art also. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I actually think art that doesn't necessarily have to follow a theme is a very good one to give ascendancy to and status, because I think we've had quite a lot of artworks in one way or another that are connected to the theme. And this may be an opportunity to introduce a new sort of spark of imagination into the domain of art around the community. And it may also be a way of engaging more closely with younger people in the show. And I think there's quite a lot of renewal going on with what happens in this area is that young people move off and go to Northbridge or Fremantle or various other places. Then when they have their children, they quite often come back because they want to give their children that freer experience that they had as kids, running around in the bush and so on. So I think there's an opportunity there to tap some different ways of thinking about art and looking at it and experiencing it. I mean, we've got a lot of things that are very connected to the natural environment, including the gum nuts, of which there are a rash.
And Jenny, in your opinion, would you say that that's like this theme of, you know, the natural environment, gum nuts, all that thinking? Would you say that that's been the natural emerging kind of organic theme that's come out over the years?
Yes, it has. And I guess it's something that people feel safe with, but it is the connection between a lot of people in this show, you know, regardless of, say, their well, let's say across a broad political spectrum, everybody who comes here comes because they want to have a closer interface with the environment. So it shouldn't in any way be discounted, but I think there are some fresh ways of experiencing art in the public domain. And there's one other thing that I think, and this may be captured later on in the discussion, but the city itself, when it's refurbishing facilities or building new ones, like its involvement with the Kalamunda Learning Centre's new building, there should be a % for art applied to that, so that the city itself is practicing what it's possibly going to promote with its private sector partners.
I think it is, isn't it?
That's the case.
So that's probably a good little opportunity just to provide a bit of an update. I have come from the city of Karratha, where I spent 11 years leading the arts, cultural and events team. And when Karratha went from a shire to a city, there was a huge amount of amenity that was introduced into the community, and big dollars, which gave us some fabulous public art opportunities. So we've been working quite hard behind the scenes to get all the processes in place here at the city, management procedures and internal procedures, so that we're able to hit the ground running with the Kalamunda Community Centre public art project, which is boiling away in the background. Obviously acknowledging that we are still going through the master planning process, but it is a really fabulous opportunity for the city as its flagship public art led project to do something really special. So it's happening.
And Jen, if I can just confirm that is actually the intent of council for all of our projects. So it's not just that other private developers have to pay in the percentage for art. It includes every single one of the city's projects. will be required either to place the allocation themselves, so to contribute art for that project, or money would go into the kitty. So you're spot on the money. That's exactly what we're doing.
Good. And so is there a % for art applied to the Kalamunda Learning Centre redevelopment?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Well all.
Go for it, Maggie.
Okay, look, notwithstanding the fact that there are gum nuts in Kalamunda, High Wycombe and Forestfield, if we were looking at places for iconic artworks, and by that generally they're fairly large, what heralds that heralds the aspirations of the City of Kalamunda, and that's looking at it over all the city, not the township of Kalamunda. What suburbs and or locations do you as a group feel that they should be in?
And once again, Jenny, I know that you're not on Menti, so happy for you to throw your answers out if you like, or thoughts.
Okay.
Yes.
I think there's a natural entry point to each community: Forestfield, Pickering Brook, Carmel, Wattle Grove, and so on. So they would be a good starting point. But Stirk Park is a huge sort of heart of the hills. We've got pocket parks as well. And
you've got a lot of parks throughout Kalamunda. They're fantastic. Actually, that's the thing that I notice most coming and going over all the city, how amazing the public open green spaces are. Sorry, I interrupted, but that's conversation for you. Sorry.
Good.
Jenny, did you want to?
Well, I agree. I think the parks are a special place, and they are very used and very loved.
Yeah.
I don't think people would want something super dramatic in those places. You know, it would need to fit in with the sort of the gentle recreation that goes on in those parks.
Yes.
As distinct from, say, Hartfield Park, which is a big, throbbing, pulsing recreation centre. But why not things in those places as well? There are plenty of people who like art and sport.
Yes. So tourism locations has come up on the screen to a person from East Fremantle. I mean, what are those? I mean, we've got a little artwork at the entry to the Bibbulmun track. What are the other tourism locations?
The entrance to the Bickley Valley, which is off Mundaring Road, the junction of Alderside and Mundaring. Well, there are two ways to enter the Bickley Valley, but that's certainly a little tourist pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, I've noticed that Kerry has her hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Kerry, did you want to share? We are welcoming anyone else who does want to share is very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I've already voted, so I can't say anything else via the app. I would like to see the art near shops where people can spend money. We have a lot of people coming into the area and they don't spend any money here. We're not generating any jobs with this. I can give you examples of places where we have thousands or hundreds of people coming in every weekend. There's no infrastructure, people parking on the roads, they come in, do what their thing, and then they leave. If we could have some sort of thing where it's near where shops, where people can get a coffee, cake, something, we can generate some business, generate some jobs for the area.
Yeah. And they can be quite small, not terribly expensive artworks, if they're placed around small buildings, small interventions. I like somebody's made the comment, boring. Yeah, boring. Actually, and when I first started going around different areas in the city, and I was in High Wycombe, which I didn't think was a boring area in totality, but what I did notice that there were quite a lot of kind of big road verges that had just been left with nothing much on them. Like on corners, there were quite big spaces on the road verges where I thought you could actually have quite a nice little artwork. You know, so I think that might be what you mean by boring little spaces, whoever wrote that. Is it? Is that Kerry's got her?
No, that was me.
Again? Right.
I just want to pick up on your comment, Kerry, and just one of the things that we found, one of the things I found in my experience with public art is particularly in more regional areas. I mean, Kalamunda's not technically regional, but we are on the outskirts a little bit, is when public art opportunities become available, ensuring that we are working with people who are committed to creating a connection with the community. And that may be by way of professional development through a public art project, or working with a community group, or some kind of commitment that there is some, if a person was to be from outside the region, that making sure that there is some commitment and connection to the community. I'm just quite keen to kind of throw that question out there. Sorry, Nick, I know that's not on the plan, but I just want to explore that a little bit and see sort of how that falls with all of you. Anyone?
Yeah. Jenny, you look like you want to say something.
I do. I'm just looking for my raised hand. Yes, I think that's important. But what I don't want to see in the future is that every public art project has to have a community component, because my experience has been that you don't always end up with the most rewarding artwork of an aesthetic standard. There are other ways that people could be involved in the commissioning process. You know, for example, in the Bickley Valley, it could be someone who's one of the vignerons, you know, who's already thinking about identity, character, all those things that come into wine. You know, you might tap a different way of thinking about things.
And I think I take that totally on board, Jenny. I was thinking yesterday about the interaction between community art and public art, and they are separate, but sometimes they do come together. But there are other ways of keeping the community on side or interacting with them, even through doing a whole range of, you know, artist talks. If the artist, particularly the artist, is coming from outside of the city, that they do a series of talks up at the Zigzag, and people can come and hear not just about the particular artwork that they're making for the City of Kalamunda, but also generally about their arts practice and how it's evolved into what is happening for the City of Kalamunda. So I think there are different ways of doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea.
And thanks everyone. I'm just going to jump in there. I just want to make sure, for those of you who aren't watching the chat, we've had some really fantastic chat happening there as well, and there seems to be a lot of agreement around verges and, you know, those parks. There was a lot of agreement with some of Jenny's comments in relation to artists being able to guide the ideas and enriching the experience of public art. That the Kalamunda circuit was another potential location that Claire put forward, which is obviously where some of our mountain biking is, and Zigzag Scenic Drive also was up there. Now, I know we could probably chat on each question for 30 minutes or so, but we do have a few to get through, and then the opportunity for some general chat for anyone who wants to stay on the line afterwards as well. But I am going to get Kat to move us along into our next question, please.
So there are a whole range of different types of public art: two-dimensional, three-dimensional, art that's just an artwork for its own sake, art that's interactive that people can clamber on or play with. There's a few little examples there of different types of artwork. This is not to suggest that in any way that you're going to end up with any future artworks that look like these. It was really just a little collection of images to stimulate thinking. So Can we move on? Oh, has everyone had a good look? Yeah. So thinking about the kind of artwork that might be most appropriate in the City of Kalamunda, or different types of artworks that might be most appropriate, would you be kind enough to do another, that, you know, the same as you did before, with 1 as the most preferred option and 7 as the least, so that we've got some idea about which way you want to go with the artwork?
And just again, anyone who's not on the app,
Yeah.
who wants to leave a comment in the chat or have a chat to us verbally, very, very happy for you to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say 1 and 2 if I were choosing. We both want some iconic and we want some intimate.
Yeah.
But all of those on the list, you know, have their benefits to particular groups.
Thanks for that, Jen. I think it's an important
that's
comment. You know,
great.
that idea, they're all important.
Has anybody got any comments that they would like to make? Oh, it's still going. I'm ahead of myself.
With the small and discrete artworks, one of the, it's not bopping now because of COVID, but one of the most sort of vibrant spaces on the weekend is the mall between Coles and the post office. And that's absolutely bopping on a Sunday because of the fresh food markets.
Right.
You won't have been able to see that, Maggie, because it's all been taken down to Costier Oval and everybody's been distant. But that's where something like small, intimate works. I think Claire Bailey's done some beautiful little pieces in
Yes.
and Hollywood. I can see those sorts of things working in the streetscapes.
The ones that kids come up and pat.
Because lots and lots of people are coming up to Kalamunda, as well as those who are in Kalamunda going to those markets, because you are going to the growers. And in some of the other areas like Pickering Brook, where we're thinking about some of the tourism elements, the core cider house draws a lot of young families, and something, you know, that is at the turn-off point in Pickering Brook there would be really, I think, really valuable. I mean, there are lots of places like this, but I'm using them as examples of where you hook onto something else that's already vibrant.
Yeah, that's great.
And, you know, there's a big Italian community. I'll take you for a drive, Maggie, to show you the hidden fruits of Pickering Brook. These gigantic homes and properties that you don't see driving along the main road.
Right.
You know,
that would be great.
You know, hierarchy of family members over different age groups living in the same area, and they're all doing fantastic things now in the Pickering Brook area. I'm sure the staff at the city would be able to endorse that.
Absolutely. Lots of tourism and diversification going on, and a lot of art emerging on properties as well. I've taken a few drives and gone, oh wow, I didn't see that before. That one's just popped up. Is that going to be there for the day, for the week? Is it there forever? It's quite exciting every time you go through.
It would be nice to hear something about how, I'm sorry, I've forgotten. It's Nicole, is it, who's running the arts program at Kalamunda?
No, Brittany.
No, it's me.
Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany. Oh, right. Okay.
At the city or at the school, Jenny?
At the school.
Oh,
At the
sorry.
school.
No,
That's
that's not
Claire
Brittany.
Eden.
No, it's not me.
Yes.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi. Be good to have your comment about how you think your program could interact, because you've still got, you're still doing the Saturday schools without us, are you? And
well, I don't run the program myself anymore, but the program does run, and I'm a teacher during the week. And I think there's a big opportunity, and particularly I was just talking about this with my colleagues yesterday, given the current circumstances with so many artists unfunded at the moment. It would be great to get some artists in residency happening in the schools, people being employed who are local to make things for the community, but also for the school, and then to bring them on site to perhaps show the students. So I'm not talking coming into my lessons every week to teach classes. I'm talking about a big project where we can see the ideas develop and the program develop, and the kids just see artwork from the beginning to the end, and then be able to recognise it in a place in their community, which would give the students something, but also the artists something to do right now to employ them. I think that's so important.
Yes, I think that interaction with
That'd be
professional
great.
artists is a really important thing for those young people who might be looking towards their future in art.
And some of the empty shops that we might have at the moment all over the city, not just in Kalamunda Central, could become studio spaces for some of our artists who could be working visibly in front of an audience. And then students, it's very hard these days to get students to go to excursions, much harder than it's ever been. And it's going to be hard. We're actually not allowed to do anything at the moment, and we can't have people come on site either. So there is a bit of a no-go zone there. But if they're working in the community, people are still out in the community seeing things. I hope that helps you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, this is just an extra question that links in, I think, to the one prior, but it's just looking to kind of confirm in relation to views on size, and I can see a lot of people are talking about that combination, that flexibility, which is just what we all discussed yesterday, Mag and Brittany, that idea that it needs to be pretty diverse.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Kat, can we move on?
Lifespan of public art. Now that's a really, this is an interesting question from two different viewpoints. So public artwork is normally, when we normally commission, it's very hard materials, and the expected life span is at least 20 years. Sometimes artworks should be deaccessioned, and perhaps are not, but also I think up in the Shire of Kalamunda, City of Kalamunda, again, one of the interesting things, precisely because you are in a forest area or semi-rural area, there is the opportunity to have some artworks, perhaps, from materials that are much more related to the natural environment. But of course, they will not last as long as 20 years. They will only last as long as they will last, and they'll kind of go back into the environment. So one of the things I was interested in teasing out was whether everyone here thinks that all of the artwork should be, you know, have with that very long life expectancy, and therefore on the whole probably made from things like concrete and metal, or whether you would accept something that was made from wood and may not therefore have such a long lifespan, is what I was kind of trying to tease out with this question. Yeah. It's about even.
That could be addressed perhaps by location. So, for example,
yes,
on the zigzag, people, I think, would be likely to have a much softer view about the work gradually fading back into the environment, whereas in a sort of a more upfront urban situation, in a street front or a shopping centre, they're going to I think, have a negative attitude if it starts to deteriorate in front of them.
Yeah. Would anybody else like to speak? No hands up. That's interesting because it is about 50-50 where the opinions lie.
Thanks, Kat.
And I guess kind of leading on from the last question is what your thoughts are on temporary or ephemeral public art. So some public art is literally only designed to last a couple of weeks or possibly a year or sometimes up to 5 years. Is this, I mean, this could connect in with something like a specific festival, a bit like Sculpture by the Sea, but actually up here in the hills, so made of different materials. Do the people here see that as a good use of funds? Do you think that that's something that the city should be investing in? Yeah. Great.
Who's typing? Someone's typing.
Yeah.
That was me, Britt.
I thought it might be.
I think connecting it to natural hooks like the Kalamunda Festival, the Harvest Festival, you know, there are a whole lot of things where I think it would, you'd have less controversy and more embracement of ephemeral artworks if you link them to some of those things.
Yes.
It would be great to do some like garden wall public art as well, like what the City of Melville in one of their big builds recently, they used their public art budget to do this enormous big garden like cube thing. It's incredible. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
No.
I
live quite close to Melville, so if you point me there, I'll go and have a look.
It's amazing. It's beautiful. But you know, that could be I would class that as ephemeral because it's not going to last forever.
Alrighty, thank you guys.
Seems to be a lot of support for that idea. That's great. Have any of you got any other comments, any other suggestions, ideas? We are totally open.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, you guys. Sorry. I'm not able to like comment. I don't know why it's disabled, but what does everyone think about the idea of I know that Forum did their public art and that was quite successful and they sort of developed a map. Do you see potential for there to be something similar in Kalamunda where it's like a bit of a tour, an art tour?
I think that is a good idea.
Yeah, I quite liked that. I quite enjoyed that in terms of a way of viewing Perth. So, yeah, I just thought I'd throw that idea out there. I would comment it, but
I think it's a really good idea. I have no idea how to develop that, but maybe there's people who've set this up from the communications team here. I'm sure all know how to do it. But I think that's also got great potential for tourism and links in with what everyone's been talking about, you know, trying to get people who come up at the weekend to stay and actually spend money. I think those things all link in together, and I think that's a really great idea.
That could be linked to some of the city's walks, brochures and so on, where they've already invested quite a bit in enticing people to do more in the shire.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I think using existing hooks is important. One thing that we haven't talked about is the quality of the curatorship of artworks. And I think that's an important issue. And I also think you've got a lot of people in this city that you could draw on for that sort of expertise. You know, I'm thinking of Dr. Judith Dinham, who's a practicing artist who Maggie would know well, who's in the Shire, Peter Efford, who used to be a senior lecturer in design at Curtin. You know, there are quite a lot of people around, and you will all probably know a lot of the younger artists who are coming through because they may have had more contact with the city staff than I know about. But I do think that aesthetic quality is very important, and you know, curatorship is good curatorship is at the heart of that. You know, the writing
I think you're right, Jenny, and I think it would be really good if the city actually had perhaps a list of arts professionals who would be willing to sit on selection panels, as well as having a coordinator, someone from the Shire, someone from the community, and someone with an arts background, I think is a good way to go. And then you've got that aesthetic input. I think it's important. But I think we did that with Zigzag. We had, from memory, Peter Efford and Bronwyn Goss on the selection panel. Yeah. So I think, and you know, considering that you have got a fabulous number of people here with arts backgrounds, you know, it'd be silly not to exploit it, really.
Absolutely.
And architects. There are some architects and planners around as well who've been looking at urban design issues.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I might just
it's been fantastic. Thank you all for such a great introduction to my first online community session and learning to do Menti. I think it's important to say that the conversation doesn't have to close here.
Absolutely.
And that we're very interested in hearing from you. I think community consultation closes off at the 6th of June, but you know, any comments up until that point are more than welcome.
That's probably a really nice segue into next steps, or am I jumping the gun, Kat?
I'll just get everyone just to rate their satisfaction with this workshop, if possible. We just want to gauge what the experience was like, obviously, because we're starting out with this sort of stuff. So if everyone could just quickly rate their satisfaction with this workshop, and feel free to pop any comments in the chat channel as well about how you felt the workshop went. And thank you, Maggie, for joining us this morning as well. It's been very valuable having on board, sharing your expertise, and also facilitating such an in-depth and detailed discussion. It's been a really good session, I think.
Thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I might just hand back to Brittany if everyone's happy with that. I'll hand back so that she can just go through the next steps for the process.
Thanks, Kat. So as Maggie mentioned, comments on the survey close on the 6th of June, but I also would encourage everybody, if there's things that you think of or that potentially don't fall under any of those questions in the category, to find a way to sneak them into the survey, or you can email them directly through to us. Part of the master planning process that Maggie has been working on is stage 2 of the process is consultation. We would have hoped to have done this with you all in person in a community workshop setting. That obviously hasn't been the case, and it's probably not going to be the case for a little while on a larger scale. So who knows, it may be. So this is where we have moved to this online forum. So next steps will be Maggie and I will sit down and collate all of the information. We really want to make sure that the master plan is representative of every single pocket and community and across the city of Kalamunda. That's really important.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we've got that good spread. If we don't, then we will probably look at ways that we can engage some other parts of the city that perhaps haven't been represented as well as we would like. So once that work is done and we feel like we've got a good spread of data, we will, not me, Maggie, will start working on the draft master plan, and then from there we'll talk about getting that all out and about so people can have comment.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you all. It's been great.
And if any of you would like to contact me directly about other ideas that you might have, Claire, I'll definitely pull you and Maz together and we can have a conversation about some stuff that we might be able to achieve quite quickly. And that goes for anybody. I'm here, and all eyes and ears. So please get in touch if you would like to have a chat.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning, and I hope you have a warm day.
Yeah, stay warm and dry.